Hello, my name is Drew, and I'm the Aspiring Master, and welcome to the Aspiring Master Presents. This is a show where we talk about the meanings, misunderstandings, and insights about the important words we use and misuse on a daily basis. Really understanding what we're truly meaning when we talk allows us to convey and explain ourselves better to others. This not only allows us clearer communication so we can get what we need quicker and with less stress, but also helps us understand ourselves in more depth than we thought possible. On this show, we have our special guest, Therese Wilson, who, like myself, is a practitioner, instructor, and advocate for personal growth and cooperative awareness. Today, we're going to be talking about need, so let's get to it. Now, I was taught that need was something that was absolutely necessary, which is to say that you needed it to survive. Like
It's a requirement.
it's an absolute requirement. So
Okay. We're going into the definition.
we are going into the definition. You bet. So this is what Merriam-Webster says about need, and the number one, it says necessary duty, right? That's no need to apologize, the need to pay taxes, right? The second definition has an A and a B part, which is really interesting. And this is one of the things that I see about dictionaries all the time is because we use this word in so many different ways, it tries to cover all the bases, right? So 2A is a lack of something requisite, desirable, or useful, which is, like the vagary, the way we use need. And the other one, 2B, is exactly what I've used need for since I was a kid, a psychological or physiological requirement for well-being of an organism, right? And that's the need that I've been exposed to. And because my stepdad says, okay, it's like when you're talking about need is you only have three basic needs: food, water, shelter. That's it. That's all you need. Those are your survival needs, and that's all you need. Now, I've since then learned that there's one more need, and that's socialization, socially. To be social in order to be able to get your needs met, because as a child, you have to have a caregiver. In order to have a caregiver, you exhibit social behavior to be able to get that caregiver to give you food, water, and shelter, right? So we build this other need, which actually supersedes the other ones initially, to be socially acceptable and accepted. So as the people that we are. So there's our fourth need, or actually I would call that need number one, and then food, water, and shelter right after that. So those are the needs that I think are needs. Now, the way that we're going to talk about this is, psychologically, we define that need in a couple of those ways, right? Psychologically, we say a lack of something requisite or desirable or useful, right? Which is that vague one, or necessary, right? So now that I've talked about that, what say you?
In your four,
Mm-hmm.
adding your fourth one as first, I think that is, I think you're correct. I think it's part of the evolution, actually, because I think your first three were more primal and instinctual before and there to forward the species before we developed full knowledge of emotional attachments and all that kind of thing.
Mm.
I think all that was part of the development stage. Just another step on the Vegas path towards our modern man. But I think you're correct. We have in our modern times, in particular, added the fourth step of socialization as a conscious thing, as a part of a social connection, rather, personal connection as part of our, maybe even added to our instinctual knowing of what is really required to have a full life.
No, you say that, and what it does, what it triggers in me is so I'm going back to like all the nature shows that I've seen and all of that stuff, and I'm going, every time a mammal has to bring up a child, right? Any kind of mammal that has to bring up a child, and this may go into the fish kingdom as well, but I don't think that it is, because fish sort of lay their eggs and like let them go. There's very few fish out there that really nurture their young. They just sort of survive or not survive. And I think that trait on an aquatic level, and I may be totally wrong on this. Somebody can zap me up on that at some point and say, no, there's some social fish out there. But based on what I've seen in nature shows, fish seem to sort of lay their eggs and just have at it. You survive or you don't. That's why they lay a whole bunch of them. But mammals, they give live births. Even if they have eggs, they have to nurture those eggs and they have to coax them, and then they help the kids up until they're capable, right? I know that in the Lion Kingdom, they only raise those kids until they're about a year, right? And then they're not coddled anymore. But they're still part of a social group. So. Same thing you see with wolves, same thing that you see with most things in the mammal. So I think that the need really is part of that primal, because we are born, because we are helpless for the first part of our lives. We really rely on the social group around us to be able to take care of us. And so exhibiting those behaviors as a child, right, the cute ones and stuff like that, really assist in that being able to be nurtured by the group and being part of the group. And this is why I think that we run into so many problems on a familiar level in our families when the dad and the mom are having issues and they ignore the kids, or stuff like that, and why we see a lot of those acting out, because you're basically ostracized from a social group. That was your main social group that you have, and if there's issues in your main social group,
well, it's where we learn how to be social,
right?
For sure, especially as human beings, where it goes beyond getting kicked out of the nest, so to speak.
Yeah,
or getting kicked out of the den.
Yeah,
having to assert early on,
I think that.
Yeah.
I think that you're right. As thinking beings, we tend to we don't kick our kids out. Well, in this day and age, actually, we're having an issue with that, for 30 years. But we don't tend to kick our kids out at that proper age. So I think that when I'm describing that need for social, and I mean, this may go into another direction here just for a bit.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, that it is at its base a primal instinct that I think has evolved beyond the primal in human beings.
Yeah. No, I hear you. That's perfect. Yeah, I think that you're right. I think that we've sort of taken it to the nth degree. Now, having said that, seeing these needs as needs, and we'll go into the sort of psychological attachment that we call need here in a minute. But when we take a look at the people that are running out and doing the school shootings, and that are out doing some pretty, what we would consider bad stuff, right? And you look at their lives, part of it is they've been ostracized socially for one reason or another. And they feel like they're not part of the group. They feel like they've been completely rejected. And so therefore fly off the handle in the other direction. Well, you don't know me now, but now you'll know me. I feel like I'm a nothing. I've been picked on through school. I've been ostracized by society. And so therefore I'll teach you. So I see that as, one of our big problems is not being able to have families and communities the way that I think that we used to, or maybe.
Yeah. And for me, too many people put this off on and make it too simplistic. They call it a psychological problem, which which it is, but it's not strictly. When someone thinks of a psychological problem, you think of something that's chemical or again, I'm not saying this right.
No, you are. Something that's chemical or something that's mentally imbalanced or.
It is a psychological problem,
Mhm.
but it's more than that.
Well, I think it stems from, like I said, I think it stems from the lack.
From a deep need for a true social connection.
Yeah.
Which is a deep need for true love. And at some point, they weren't demonstrated.
Yeah, they weren't nurtured.
Or demonstrated to or allowed to understand what that really means, for themselves first, and going out from there. Somehow, and I'm going to say somehow, this need for a social connection has been eliminated in many cases in our modern culture. Most people, not too long ago, and still it's true for a high percentage of people, but most people would grow up, would be born, raised, live their entire lives within 5 to 10 miles of where they were born. They had a social base. Now companies transfer people around the world now, or just across to the next state or whatever, and people are starting all over again, but they don't have the skills to start all over again, because they've also been told at the same time that they don't need this social connection. What they need is money. What they need is X, Y, and Z. And they don't know how to meet their next door neighbor. They don't know how to find some kind of social club that they can belong to with a common interest. We don't know how to do that anymore. Now we have the internet that says, we can say and do whatever the heck we want because we're anonymous, and it doesn't matter what we ultimately say and do to the other person because we can just unfriend them. So we are messing with breaking the bond that is so essential to our well-being, period.
Well,
but I'll bet you find a lot of these, and I would be curious to know how many of these people have, especially the kids who turn into shooters, how many of their parents are also isolated and don't know about social connection that they haven't demonstrated to their child. How many of them are transferred around, or how many of them, in our pursuit of things, we have parents who are working so many hours that they don't have time for the true connection with their children. Mm-hmm. In pursuit of something outside of themselves. So they are neglecting the need to connect truly, emotionally, with those in their intimate circle.
Mm-hmm. Just for everybody, and to really understand what we're talking about right here, there's a book called Social: Why Our Brains Are Wired to Connect by Matthew D. Lieberman, and it is a fantastic book to really go into understanding how our brains are actually hardwired to connect on a social level. So what this need entails, right? So anybody that has the opportunity to read that book, I highly recommend it. It is what really opened my eyes to understanding I was missing one of our basic needs, which is social connection, and food, water, and shelter. Now, having said that, and having had our talk about our basic needs and how important social is in comparison to even the other ones for us right now, those would be what I would consider needs, right? That's what I was taught was a need, that you absolutely have to, and going back to the dictionary definition of it, a psychological or physiological requirement for well-being of an organism. That's my understanding of what need means. Now, when we get into psychological needs, Now, and this will stem from like literally a need fulfillment on that social level, I think, because as we're talking, I'm making connections to our basic needs, why we think these things are needs. So it's like I have to have chocolate, right? So
But
like.
because you just saw that Ghirardelli chocolate commercial with all the lovely chocolate floating down. Yeah. My husband starts to drool every
Yeah.
single time.
But that's not a need. That's something that we can overcome in ourselves, right? It's not necessarily a need. It's like, I'm not going to die without chocolate. But what we do is we equate that base need to chocolate. Now, I have to say that advertisers may be a big part of this. They hit you psychologically with it. They understand our psychology. Yeah. So I get that. But the truth is, to me, chocolate is not a need. It's just a desire, right? Or it may be even a strong desire. And I think this is where we get mixed up with need and desire, strong desire, attraction, all of that stuff. We get that all mixed up and we turn it into this primal thing, right? I'm saying right again, but it's like that we turn it into this primal thing. And I think that's a mistake. I think that we get caught up in there so much about the need. Like, I mean, I need to have the loved one. Now, this is another bushel of cats to detangle. When you're absolutely in love with someone, and we've talked about this in another show about being in love and the chemicals that do that, you become chemically dependent upon another person. And it feels like an absolute need. And I'm sure that any junkie out there that has, I'm not talking about junkies per se, but recovered alcoholics, recovered addicts will understand that whole I have to have, right? That need to be able to get the next fix. And the same thing happens when you're in love. It absolutely feels like a need, even while it's not, right?
Yeah, and I don't want to just gloss over the impact of advertising and media on this, because it has had a huge impact on shifting the definition of need from things that are basic requirements for living to your happiness is outside of here. You need all of this to be happy, to be fulfilled, to live a happy life. It started it started before that, but there was absolutely a plan in the Eisenhower administration post World War II. How do we continue the mobilization that happened after World War II with the arms munitions being built and the tanks and everything else? How do we shift that to a peacetime mode? And it was determined that we now need planned obsolescence. We need to convince people that they need a new toaster every 6 years. They don't need to get it repaired. They need a new one. They need a new washer and dryer. We're going to start building these things so that they do break down. They're not built as well. And we're going to convince people that they need the new one to keep Joneses, to make themselves feel good, to fill themselves up in some way from the outside in. They convinced us that our needs are not our needs. Mm-hmm. Our desires, our things that we covet are our needs now. They're not something that can be superseded by, let's take a close look. Do we really, require this in our lives? No, we need that. We've got two people in many households, way too many households working now, going back to no time to build the social connection with their children or their neighbors, no time to build community outside of the workplace. And those people don't really know you. They don't have time to sit down and really get to know you. So it is now not a need society. It's a desire. It's a want. It's uh, we don't even have preferences anymore. We need this. And when you need with only one way of fulfillment being there, then you got a problem. And that's why we have problems.
Well, we don't need to have problems. I'm just kidding.
But we do.
But we do. Well, as you were talking, here's what my mind was going through. I was going, okay, so how do they equate that down to, let's look at our 4 basic needs: social, food, water, shelter. Now, food, water, shelter is a really easy one because we connect that in. The only way that we can get food, water, and shelter is to create money. In order to create money, we have to go work. So in order for us to be fed and all of that stuff, and we tie into all of that need is our family to be fed because they're attached to us, right? Like and it's been men, particularly in our society, tend to have a big responsibility around, you got to bring in home the bacon, baby. Now it's shifting, right? Women being
that shift has majorly shifted.
Absolutely.
It's still unequal, but
now go ahead.
The biggest portion of single people with children are women,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and they're also now a huge part of the homeless population with children.
Yeah. Well, and
so it's not just men who are feeling really responsible for the need for money.
I agree. There's a whole bunch of things to unpack in those statements, and I just want to touch on a couple of them because it's like the reason that I talk about men as that going through the 50s and 60s and 70s, there was a lot of responsibilities. Now, once we hit the late 60s and we went into the 70s and we did the equal rights for women movement and all of the stuff that happened there, which, by the way, we can trace to the fact that birth control and
that we women finally got allowed birth control.
Yeah, exactly. Like the birth control is what really freed that. Okay.
Yeah.
And so once that was happening, now we're not tied to the house the way that we used to be. So we split that up. So we're relatively young on the level of women being part of the workplace and all of that stuff. So we're working at it and we're doing a really good job. We've come a long way to from where we began. But that's not saying that it's not going to be disproportionate still at this point. Obviously it is, and obviously we're still working on it. I also want to say, when you said, like the proportionately women and children on the streets, single, unfortunately, on some levels, that was a double-edged sword too, because the court system is skewed towards the women having custody and maintaining custody over the men, and it's
in Western cultures,
no, I agree. Western, and I have to talk in my own experience, obviously, in Canada and the U.S. We have a problem in our court system that disproportionately rewards the children to the women on those sides, even though there's a lot of husbands out there that want to take that kind of responsibility that can't, because they're awarded, and then all of a sudden it goes that way. So it's not only that.
Unfortunately, in this modern age, there are a lot of women who were unmarried when they had the children,
mm-hmm.
and men will either not take responsibility or not be told that they are the ones, or they don't know that they are the ones.
Well, I mean, it's good to touch on those things because we're talking in those places. I don't want to make the entire talk about them, but it's a really good thing to talk about and start conversations on. Like, I mean, I think that anybody out there should be opening their minds, taking a look at different avenues and all of that.
There's a lot of we are now mistaking preferences for needs.
Right. And I think that, you know, like I said, I was going for the equation. Like I'm equating, we need to have money in order to have food, shelter.
See, that's where that's even, we need to have some means of exchange,
Yes.
of mutual benefit, but we don't need money. We have again Western culture. We have primarily eliminated our backyard gardens where we can, one person grow tomatoes and the next person grow cucumbers and the next, onions, and share our abundance, and we have eliminated any means of exchange, value exchange, except for money,
Well,
for the most part.
well,
We don't need it to be money. We need to learn. We need to learn. We can learn how to share in this world because there is enough, but we don't know how to share.
Well, let's take a dive into that need scenario, because
I almost died diving. Are you sure you want me to dive?
yes,
Okay.
I am sure, and I promise you won't drown in these words. So let's take a look at that. So here's what my mind does while you're talking, is it's going, okay, now here's the connection. So we've been taught that we need money for food, water, and shelter, right? In the society, that's at least mostly true, what we've discovered. Now, how did they do that? First off, is they broke the social contract. First off, they took us away socially. They isolated us as individuals, took away our communities, right? And it's like they didn't take them away. They just sort of promoted other things. They promoted materialism.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are strong, independent women.
Yes. They promoted materialism. They discouraged people from having their own gardens. And here we are living in a society. We've got so many people that, I know some of the people on my street. I know that there's a guy named Peter that lives over here. I know the next door neighbors quite well. I'm not friends with them, but I know who they are. I've got a little bit of sense of community, but everybody at this point is so scared of everybody else that we've all kind of sucked into our own little teensy groups, and except for the extroverts that go out there and become parts of bigger groups, but they're not really interconnected. They're just sort of people that they can go spend time with. And I say that being an introvert, right? All those extroverts are like, you don't know me, right? So
you're going, stay away,
exactly. Stay away. You don't know me. What are you talking about? What we'd call introvert splaining, away that extrovert stuff. Anyway, but so we don't really know our neighbors. We don't really have that. Like, there's some people that do. There's some people that go out there and do that. But I find the majority of people are leery of everybody else. And we're taught to be that way. So in all our programming, if we look at our programming, the world's a dangerous place. You'd better not. Like on our news, that's what they report. They report all the fear stuff. They report a couple of good things about puppies. But, on the most part, it's really, really fearful. It's really, really disdainful and all of this stuff. And I see that psychologically we're all pushing away. Now, what they're doing is they're circumventing by doing that. And I'm sure that there's psychologists out there that are part of whatever's going on, that are advising these people, oh, we need to do this in order to be able to push the populace this way and push the populace that way so that we can get them to buy more things or be part of capitalism or however that works. I'm sure that there's some of that out there that I just don't know about. So I'm just surmising. But what it's done is it's circumvented our base primal need, social acceptance. Yeah. And once you do that and you're cut off from that, then money is the only way to feed yourself, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
back to my mother again. She didn't know how to be affectionate very well to. She was good with babies, but once we got into being grown people, she didn't, especially a girl, but the way she showed affection was to hand someone $100 bill. That money said "I love you" in a way that she couldn't. So yeah, I get what you're saying. We have packaged our country as individuals with individual rights that supersede group rights.
Yeah.
And you're right. Our individuals, we come home, we open our garage door, we close our garage door behind us. We don't open our blinds anymore. In Houston, most of the yards have 6-foot privacy fences around the backyard, if you even use your backyard. And then they come home, they go back the next day to work, and you don't see the neighbors.
Well,
I am a social person in ways that I didn't understand. We moved into this neighborhood 20 years ago almost, and moved back in 2005 again. We in and out of the neighborhood for different reasons. And when I came back and had a dog to walk around the neighborhood, I made a point of waving at every car that came by and every person that I walked by, say hello and make eye contact. Because when I lived in Korea, I realized that no one's making eye contact. And when I did make eye contact with someone and smiled at them, I could wonderful look of surprise and that smile back from them. So it filled me as well. So I'm waving at these people. And I cannot tell you how many times over the years people have pulled over and said, "Thank you for starting our day off with a wave and a smile," that kind of thing. And now those people that I waved to over the years, they are walking by my house and we actually have conversations, and they know who I am and I know who they are. And we can develop social connections in the smallest of ways, but we're not willing to do it because you're right. We're afraid of needing people. We're not afraid of connecting. We're afraid of needing people now because we don't know what to do with it. We don't know what to do with a connection anymore.
Well,
we don't know what to do with a hurt that might come from a connection.
When we're talking about the whole need thing and how we sort of got on the track of we need things, or we need this to be happy, or we need this to be happy. And again, we describe things in the basis of need. Instead of I desire these things because they make me feel a certain way, we don't have that thought process. All we say is, I need that. We become addicted to, I guess maybe we're addicted to happiness to a great degree, is that then from there, it's really easy to make something a need, right? If you say, I have to be happy because it fills me, then I need these things in order to be this.
Yeah. In truth, the law of attraction says that you get what your strongest thought is what you will attract. So when you want and you need, that strong energy of want and need gives you more want and need.
Right.
Because that's what your energy is. It doesn't give you what you think you are desiring. It gives you more want and need. So if you change your perspective and change it to, I have a preference for something, I have a desire for something, with no requirement for how that thing gets fulfilled, you are more likely to get that very thing that you think you need. But when you change your energy to preference and desire, you have a better chance of receiving it. Of course, it might not look what you think it's going to look like, but it'll be there.
So when you were talking about that here my mind was going, okay, let's go down the scale. So I need X to be happy, right? The next question that I'd ask is, why do I need to be happy? Again, that's
and I wouldn't even put happiness as a need. I put happiness as a choice.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I agree, because I know the structure of happiness. I know how it works. Happiness is something that you can be in any given moment. It's like you can get there via gratitude, right?
Happiness is not a state of happiness is a state of beingness for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that what we get confused in here, this may be another word that we have to talk about at some point, is the difference between happiness and how we equate it to pleasure sensations, physical pleasure sensations. But I mean, it's happy is definitely another word we got to tackle, because I understand happiness in a different way than most people do, and like you said, I agree that it's a choice, and you can get there. You can get to that place of contentment that I call happiness, is through being grateful and changing the way that you see things in your mind. So that, again, another discussion.
Yeah,
but I'm going
happiness, the need for happiness,
mm-hmm.
And filling that need from the outside in with the things and stuff that we've been discussing. There was a psychological study that showed that rich people commit suicide per capita much more often than poor people. Because they got all their needs, they got all the bells and whistles and the toys, and they're still not happy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's that we're going down to that whole need thing that they've allowed us to develop. Said you need water, shelter, and food. In order to be able to get water, shelter, and food, you need to have money.
And still, in my country, the basic needs, the only real needs, basic needs of people, the water, shelter, and food, are the things that we won't give them. We won't develop a social structure, and let's include medicine in that. Mm-hmm. We won't develop a social structure because of our independent, individual culture. We won't create a culture that gives people at least the basic needs. I'm not talking about putting everyone in McMansions. I'm talking about, it's not a sin to give someone food stamps for their children. It's not, they're not deadbeats. Look at the culture that we have developed that doesn't allow them to make the living that they should be able to make. Well, and our government, our cultures have failed.
Well, I agree. And let's. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go through the tier that I've seen. This is how we develop the needs that are superfluous, that we feel our needs. So and this is how I've described it. Okay, so. And this is just based on our conversation coming up and it becoming conscious in my mind. So we've got, as I was saying, we've got the basic needs, food, shelter, water. Okay. So those are our basic needs that I was taught. Now, I didn't know about the social need yet. Okay.
These are physical needs.
These are the three physical needs. Well, and social is a physical need, but we've been taught these three, right?
That's included, yeah. Higher vagus function.
So, if we look at those three, what we've got is you need food, water, and shelter. In order to get food, water, and shelter in our capitalist society, at least on a Western level, I'm sure that there's social societies out there that help, but we're still all on a monetary system of some sort. So in order to get food, water, and shelter, you need to have money. In order for you to have money, you need to have a job, right? Or you need to have a source of income. Right? Doesn't necessarily have to be a job, but mostly that's what's encouraged. And then once you have this job and you've taken care of food, water, and shelter, then the tier is, well, Now that you have food, water, and shelter, well, you need this stuff to make your life easier because you work hard. You work hard for your money. You need this in order to mop your floors better. You need this in order, you know what I'm saying? It's all of a sudden they've equated the need for food, water, and shelter. Now they've addicted you to ease, right? And to make it easier on you, you need this new product or that new product. And it's no different when you need to be distracted because the world's a really tough place. So why don't you play a video game? And now that you've played your video game and you are addicted to the adrenaline rush that happens there, now you need to expand your video thing. You need a new video card. You need new games. It's like we go into this tier of need that really starts from those basic needs. And then from there, we're convinced that more and more needs come in, right?
We've turned the everyday person into an addict.
Yeah, basically. And I mean,
and we wonder why we have so many prominent addictions.
Well,
and so many
we definitely
prominently addicted.
Yeah, we definitely need to talk about capitalism and how that does that first, because really the capitalism and the way that has really pulled now, and I'm not advocating like communism in this case, and I personally on my own front prefer a socialistic capitalism, a blended unit. We have some of that now. I think we need more of it, but that's, again, another topic. But what I see capitalism as having done in the need factory, because let's call it the need factory, because I think it's like we've ramped up this idea that we have to have, right?
The modern idea,
yeah,
not the basic idea.
No, not the basic idea, but they've done is they've built on that basic and said, now that you got this, you need this to make your life easier. You need this to make your life more pleasurable. Again, we're mistaking pleasure for need at this point, right? We're going, I need to feel like I'm fulfilled, right? So
that endorphin hit.
Yeah. Well, I need to, and I think that's really where need comes in, is that we've equated need to pleasurable sensation. We need to feel that. If we're feeling dull today, we need to feel better. Now, one of the things that I found personally, just to kind of circumvent that desire system, is I've switched the word that I use first from need to I desire, which makes it a choice as opposed to something that must happen, right? I take the expectation of the need and I remove it and I say, okay, now I have desire.
Expectations versus preference is a very different thing.
Yeah. Well, I prefer to feel happier, not a problem, instead of I need to feel happier.
But yeah, and if you have an expectation that only this is going to make you happy and you don't get it, then you're not happy.
Mm-hmm. When you're talking about suicide, because we have this desire for need fulfillment, right? And you were talking about rich people and trying to fill that, and religions talk about this too. You're trying to fill this God-sized hole with things, right? Is the line that I hear from religious people. But I don't.
The needle.
Yeah.
The eye, the needle.
Yeah.
Camel,
whatever you're trying to fill, something. Now, here's the thing that you're trying to fulfill. It is the need for social connection. And that's what you're trying to fulfill. It's nothing else, because that's one of our basic needs that we've just been missing. Anyway.
and we have disconnected ourselves first from our children.
Yes.
And that they broke up the family unit with this people need to fulfill. I had a neighbor in one city, had the big pretty house next door to me, had no furniture in it.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't afford it.
Their priorities were all skewed, and when I drove by, I thought they lived in a big pretty house, but they didn't know that they were struggling to make the rent or the house payment, and could not barely afford food, and sure couldn't afford anything more than a few beds and the basic things inside.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, our values are skewed,
Right.
so they disconnected us from our family unit,
Mm-hmm.
having us give all the things because the two parents were off working and the kids were there alone and coming over to my house because I was there at home. Uh, but we don't know our neighbors because she was just lucky I was there
Mm-hmm.
most of the time. The other neighbor, the other side, they were working, uh, and disconnected us from any real social thing. So, yep, there we go.
Right.
We're completely isolated and we're completely vulnerable to the tactics of how do we fill her up now?
Right.
Oh, we make her get more.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that when we're looking at our social need, right, which is, I think that our missing prop here, I think that we and that the world has taken advantage of that missing prop, and said, buy our products because you need to feel better. Not really understanding that the need to feel better is to actually create a social group that works well together. One of the reasons why many religions work as good as they do, even though I don't agree with a lot of the things that they're saying in the religion, one of the things they got right is family and community. You feel part of a community, and that's why you see people that are massively disenfranchised in their lives either turn to religion or crime. Right? Because there's something fulfilling really in both of them. And I think that religion itself provides that need fulfillment of being able to be part of a social group. And there's something to be said of how wonderful that is.
Yeah, we're going back to the rat in the drug addicted rat
Mm-hmm.
that I talked about once before. The cocaine addicted rat, taken get the rat addicted in an isolated situation, put the rat in a social setting, and very soon the rat's drinking regular water and ignoring the cocaine water.
Mm-hmm.
Because what they really need, and this is what's shown in humans, not just rats, is what the addiction is to mask what they're feeling and fill the hole of what they're feeling because lacking that social connection.
Mm-hmm.
Get back into the social connection, then their addiction can be overcome more easily, which is why, a lot of people don't like the fact that AA is that they say it's not in any particular
Religion,
faith, and it's not, but it is about a higher power, but it is about primarily a social connection. Yes. Again, it's filling that social connection hole.
Why do we feel we need so many things, right? So why instead of choices, instead of desires, instead of stuff that we choose to go after, that we feel that we need them, and so obviously one of our four needs is really not being met, right? And I think that we've stumbled upon here, well, not necessarily stumbled upon, I'm sure other people know about it, but one of the things that I've just finally equated as we're talking is that need, that hole that we feel in our lives is absolutely that, social acceptance. And when we're talking about social acceptance, that means love, that means right? It means all of those things of being acceptable and accepted in our surroundings by the people that are around us. And this is why why social the social system online, like Facebook and Twitter and all of those things exploded, is because we're all looking for that connection. Well, look, we can find groups of people that can identify with us, and so we go there. But then they become giant rant groups about everybody else. They actually separate us to a great degree because now we're part of this group.
Yeah, they separate us because very few of us are putting online, oh, I had a really sucky day today. Oh, my husband cheated on me, my kids are in jail, then I burnt dinner. They're not going to put that on there. They're going to show the pictures of the perfect meal, and they're going to show pictures of the perfect kids. And when their life is falling apart, it's not online. It's not a true connection because it's only what you want people to see.
Well, and I mean, but it's the exact opposite too, because I see lots of people doing exactly what you just said. It's not that. It actually is. A lot of the younger people, we're looking for recognition. I'm hurt here. Please me. I see lots of people vague booking. Oh, I'm so hurt today, because they're fishing for compliments. They're fishing for people to tell them that it's okay.
Yeah.
It's
us older people don't do that.
Yeah, that's true. Like, I mean, the more mature people don't, but I see a lot of immature, of course, immature old people. But it's one extreme or the other. I don't think that there's some people that are sitting in the middle ground and really trying to utilize this tool, because it is a tool, as something that can help them and connect with people in their lives, like really connect with them. I know that by doing the biography that I'm recording, I get to go onto Facebook and contact some people and say, hey, I'd really like to have a Zoom call with you, because I know that there's some memories I'm missing from when I knew you, and I'd really like to see your perception of who I was back then, so that I can rebuild the idea of who I was back then and what kind of issues I was going through. So to me, it's a massively good tool on a social level for me to be able to do that. But I take it and I appreciate it, or I take it and I make it more. And I will utilize it and say, okay, I'm going to, like, it's no different than what we're doing right now. We're utilizing this medium as an incredible tool for both you and I to process, right?
It can, there's no question that it can be a wonderful, beautiful tool.
Well, and my wife thinks I'm a beautiful tool, and she's told me so on many occasions.
Okay, I'm done. Are we done?
Are we finished yet? It's just like, you're being a tool, Drew. Just shut up. It's like
I think I need a shower now.
I didn't mean that in a sexual way. Oh. No, that's our next conversation, honey.
My mother did raise me very well in one sense. I am exactly like her. Her mind just immediately went into the gutter.
Absolutely.
And I followed her there from the time I was a little kid. So
when I do professional emceeing, one of my favorite lines that I came up with was, I said, ladies and gentlemen, it's a clean show. I mean, when I'm doing this kind of emceeing, I make it clean. But listen, I'm a bus driver. I may drive up to the gutter and open the doors. It's you who chooses to step out.
You want to get back?
Okay. So anyway, back to need. I think that where we were talking around the what we're missing and what we're trying to fulfill is that social need, that social acceptance, and I think we miss out not only on a government level, but on a societal level. Capitalism has convinced us that food, water, and shelter are our needs. But from there, when those are satisfied, they come up with more needs. And like you said, they've created culture that's they create obsolescence into things, because there's certainly a way not to. There's some old stuff that still works today, right, that you didn't need to replace, right? But they keep coming up with new and better things in order to replace the old.
There's no question. My husband bought into one thing in particular, and that was the big shiny new car. Every 2 years we had a new car, and it's only recently that he has become convinced, finally, that it's okay to pay off a car. It's okay to buy one a couple of years old, let someone else eat the depreciation. We now have one car that's 13 years old, but it's only got 40,000 miles on it.
Nice.
45. and we have another one that's 5 years old.
Yeah.
That's a first, and they're both paid off. That's a first.
Nice. So to recap, we've got four needs. Our first need is the need to be socially acceptable, to have a social network. It is hardwired. It is part of our brain. For those people that haven't don't really want the science behind this, I highly recommend reading the book Social: Why Our Brains Are Wired to Connect by Matthew D. Lieberman. He's a scientist. He's done the study on this. This is really science fact in how we're wired. So social connection.
This is polyvagal theory as well.
Yeah. And we need food, water, and shelter. Those are our needs. All the other stuff is just preferences or things that will help us get to that place in those, to fulfill those things. So money is only a need insofar as we require it in this society in order to be able to get food, water, and shelter, unless you know how to grow. We require how to grow, and you have a good backyard where you can. And the barter system. We still need exchange, so that's still a social thing, right? To be able to fulfill those. So those are our needs. The rest is all preferences, is all desires, and even wants. And those are if we're feeling unfulfilled, we're trying to fill the social need, really, as a bottom line, with stuff. And in order to be able to fill that need, I think that we need to find out who we are, understand who we are, express who we are, and find those people that are compatible with that, or allow them to find us, really, is what I would say.